You're listening to another episode of Badass Mums.
I'm Tneek, a female rapper and bid professional.
I'm Tahira, presenter and content creator.
And I'm Cilla, singer-songwriter and all-round creative.
Together, we are Badass Mums. Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Badass Mums. Today we have a very special guest. She's the health and fitness guru. She's the author of Strong Like Mums Method. And of course, she's a badass mum. Make some noise for Shakira.
Hello. Thanks so much for having me here today.
Hi, welcome.
How are you?
Yeah, I'm good. I'm sweaty. I've just had a big old hike from the tube station with the biggest bag. So, yes. But I'm good. I'm happy to be here.
Right.
And how many children do you have? Just so our listeners know.
I've got 4.
And their ages. 4.
I've got 4 kids.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I've got
like
4.
Come on.
Yes. I've got 4. Mine are 8, 5. He's nearly 5, so 8, 5, and then the twins are 2.5.
Oh, you got twins.
So, yeah.
Oh my
so
God.
twins.
That's amazing.
You did 4 individual.
This is my 4th here.
Oh my God, 4 individual pregnancies. You.
Yeah.
Whew, yes.
4. Oh my God. And even carrying that big suitcase as you came in, I was like, this mum is on a mission. Like, she's not playing around. Like, she's on it. Just a busy bee.
Exactly that. Yeah, exactly.
Oh. So we wanted to bring you because obviously, especially me and Cilla, we've been on this fitness journey. We keep telling T, chill, babe, don't worry.
I'm just itching.
Your time's coming. And yeah, we know you're like an expert in this. And we just wanted to get your inside info on like, as busy working mums, I mean, I can't imagine 4, I've only got 2. Like, how do we find this balance of like looking after ourselves, even though we're working and we've got the kids and everything?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think that we'll obviously like spend this time talking about this topic in general, but like as a starting thought, I think it's crucial that we as mothers are allowed this opportunity and allow ourselves the opportunity to recover and replenish and just take that time for ourselves. I know for me that I feel like I can apply myself in a much more positive way in motherhood if I've had some time to myself. And I don't have any guilt around that because it is a busy life that probably everyone is living at the moment. The world is like a fast-paced thing. And I can just feel, throughout the day that my stress levels will rise. And if I can just have a little bit of time to myself, whether it's, sometimes I have the time to go for a run, sometimes all I can do is go into the garden and take a few deep breaths, and that's all I've got time for. But taking those moments to recognize when your cup is empty and being able to fill that back up is like, for me, that was always a priority because I knew I'm going to be able to be a much more efficient, focused, energized parent if I've taken that time than if I haven't.
That's good.
And it's funny because society always makes us feel as mothers guilty if we all of a sudden want to do something that's nothing to do with the kids, nothing to do just for us, like putting ourselves first. But it's what you're saying.
Do you know what though? Because you said earlier, how do you do it with 4? I found the first 2 by far the most challenging, and actually by the time I had 4, I am so, this sounds ridiculous, but I'm so busy now. I do not have time to feel guilty. I'm not trying to be perfect. I'm just trying to do my best. And I'm trying to do it. And if I do something wrong, and sometimes I think, oh, maybe I've made the wrong decision. Maybe at that time, actually, it wasn't the right time for me to do that. Maybe I should have read that extra story at bedtime. But I just let the guilt go because I know that I'm just here trying to do my best. I'm human and I am showing my children what it is like to try my best as a parent, create a loving home, but also I have passions outside of the home that I want to achieve and, teaching them that.
So how long would you say after having a baby is best to start exercising, best to start the fitness? Because I found with me, it's like I suffered with the recti.
Yeah, diastasis recti. Yeah, diastasis recti.
Right, because everyone says it differently. And every time I tried to exercise, I just found I couldn't close it back up.
Yeah.
And I felt maybe I was doing it too soon, or should I have waited? So how long would you say?
Okay, so it is one of these annoying answers where it's going to be unique to each woman. However, there are some certain things that we can look out for to help us identify when we're ready to like progress exercise or engage in exercise to begin with. Right. So one of the first things as professionals we would look for is how the core is functioning. And part of that, not all of that, but part of that is what you're mentioning, this diastasis recti. So for anybody listening who doesn't necessarily know what that means, there's 4 basic layers of your abdominal muscles, right? The outer layer, the six-pack muscle, is called the rectus abdominis. And then under that, we've got 2 layers of obliques. And then there's a 4th layer under that, which is called the transverse abdominis. And this muscle is really important because diastasis recti refers to that outer layer, that 6-pack muscle. And when you're pregnant and the uterus begins to expand and the baby grows, as that bump grows, the 2 halves of that 6-pack muscle move out to the side as the bump grows. And in the middle is this like other body tissue that we call the linea alba. So the muscle itself isn't torn or ripped, it moves out, but this midline stretches. It's like a really stretchy material. Yeah. During postpartum, that can come back together. But for many women, in fact, the majority of women, it doesn't come back together. But what's often misunderstood is that, okay, if I have a gap, then, you know, I can't do anything and I've got to wait for the gap to come back together. But actually, for the majority of women, that gap never comes back completely back together.
That's crazy.
But no. And I am one of them. So my diastasis, I've got a 1 centimetre diastasis recti gap. But this is why, when I talked through those layers, that deep layer, this transverse abdominis that is the deepest layer, becomes so important, because what we can do, and at the moment the recommendations are saying if your gap is 2 centimetres or less, we can use those other layers to build a strong base underneath. So for me, I've got this gap of this front muscle, but if you were to see me work, and when I engage my core, you can physically see that muscle underneath creating that tension and that strength. So that a gap doesn't matter, because what's surrounding it is actually able to keep it really stable and strong and functioning. So we don't have to have that gap come back together. We just need to be able to strengthen all the surrounding muscles.
So would you say it widens each child that you have?
Not necessarily. So I've had every time you're pregnant, for 100% of women that reach a full-term pregnancy and deliver, they will have diastasis recti, because the muscle has to separate it out, right? But as it comes back together, it can depend, like that really depends on not just, you know, genetically how your body is made, but also something as simple as like your hydration levels. If you want, if you know what your skin is doing, how your muscles function, all these small little lifestyle changes that we put in place all plays a part. And then it's largely to do with the exercises that we're doing. If you're doing the right kind of exercises, then you're going to be able to build a really strong core. It doesn't matter if I've had 4 babies, you could have 10 babies, or, you know, I work with someone who've had 1 baby and they have a diastasis recti that isn't functioning well because we haven't done, or they haven't yet done the work that they need to create that support, you know?
So what kind of exercises then would you recommend to start with?
Yeah, okay.
To deal with that? And is there a difference between whether you've had a natural birth or C-section?
Okay.
In terms of bringing that all back together and the strengthening as well?
You guys and your questions are so good. I'm like, okay,
I'm just interested.
Here I was doing my conversation, thinking I had myself a lovely sit down. Oh, okay. So, great question. So I'm going to have to answer this in parts. Please stop me if like I'm going on a tangent, because there's so much to say. And what I would encourage, you know, first up, encourage anyone to do who is in this situation, who wants some answers, is to keep searching for your answer. So I'll touch on a few things. There will be an answer to your question, but there is so much I could say about all of that. Your question was, is it the same for vaginal and cesarean deliveries? And then you had a second question, which was, what are the best exercises? Great, okay, fantastic. So firstly, what is the difference between the two? So regardless of what type of delivery you've had, we still need to do that core rehabilitation work. So the pelvic floor right now during your pregnancy is still managing all the additional weight of the baby, the amniotic fluid, the placenta. And also when you're pregnant, which affects the core massively, is that as the bump grows, your pelvis, if you imagine your pelvis like a bowl of cereal, right? As you're pregnant and the bump grows, it's tipped forwards as if the water would slosh out the front of the bowl, right? If you're drinking water with your cereal. Why there's water in this bowl, right? But So this has, again, so many effects on the body. One, if your pelvis is tilted in that position in pregnancy, it means that your glutes are going to be placed into like a constantly stretched position. So we need to be doing glute exercises to get that glute function back, because it's going to help realign the pelvis postpartum. If we don't realign that pelvis properly and it continues to have that tilt forwards, that anterior tilt, there's a lot more pressure on the front of the abdominal wall just from our natural posture. So we want to rehabilitate that again, because it's going to really impact something like diastasis recti by setting that back. Another thing about this posture change is that all your, not only baby and amniotic fluid, all your internal organs, when we have like that optimum pelvis posture, everything balances kind of equally across the bony structure of the pelvis. And when it tips forwards, it's tipped off that and it balances on the pelvic floor. So again, like all of that, we need to work on like bringing that back. It's one of the most, and the word posture like couldn't be more boring. It sounds so boring when I'm like, you need to work on your posture. But honestly, like this has a real impact. Okay, so that's one of the first things we look at: glute function and realigning our posture, regardless of what type of delivery you've had. If you have a cesarean delivery, one of the really important things that we need to do postnatally is you'd benefit a lot from scar tissue massage, and for lots of women, particularly if it's been an emergency cesarean, but I think any type of cesarean, it can be a real emotional process to have to get used to the incision site and the cesarean. It's not always comfortable for women, and it can take a lot of work, even just to put your hands over that, that incision site. So, but working on that abdominal massage is really important. Because another really important thing about the cesarean, when you're having a cesarean, is you're dealing with scar tissue, and any type of scar tissue anywhere in your body is, really crucial that we, most importantly, that we keep it mobile, because scar tissue can bind around other, internal soft tissue and just make movement more difficult. And so by doing this massage, it's going to really help us. Another really important fact is that kind of newer research is showing that emotional stress can trigger scar tissue regrowth. So if you've had a cesarean and you feel high levels of stress, this can start the process. So we really want to work on relaxation, staying calm, being mindful. Wow. Now onto like, what are the best kind of exercises? We want to look at pelvic floor function because the pelvic floor is kind of the base of the core. So it's not just the pelvic floor. The core is so much bigger than we think. It's not just our abdominals. It is the pelvic floor, it is the abdominals. We've got lower back muscles, glutes. Your adductor and abductor muscles are the muscles on either side of your thighs, kind of just below where the glutes are. We've got our abductor muscles on the outside that help us lift the leg out, and the adductor muscles on the inside. And all of this shares ligaments and tendons and tissues with the pelvic floor. So if we want a healthy functioning pelvic floor, we need to be looking at all of that. So an exercise like the bridge, right, where you're lying on the floor, you've got your feet hip width apart, and you engage your glutes and lift your hips off the floor, so you're in that diagonal position from your tailbone down to your neck. That's really great because it's glute activation, but it also forces us to work the pelvic floor, pelvic stability, all these surrounding muscles that I've mentioned.
That's my least favourite exercise, by the way.
Is it? Because why is it your least favourite?
I don't know. It's just that, I don't know. It's just
boring
not fun.
See,
and also painful.
Really?
All over,
there's so many ways to make that movement fun.
Okay.
And I have the equipment outside in my bag. But honestly, to do, making movement enjoyable is really important to sustaining it. I'm not going to bore you with the science behind the human brain with that, but we need to be able to enjoy something, but it doesn't have to be the straight line, up, down, count of 8,
Is that similar to hip thrusts?
Yeah.
The same thing.
Hip thrust, it depends what you mean by hip thrust, but a hip thrust I would class as something where often you can have like a bench behind you and you're lifting your hips off the floor in that way, which it's like a progression of that movement, working similar muscles. But then there's so many other things that I would do. Like if you're lying on the floor, and you've got your couch, I'd put if you lie with your head at the top and then you're lying towards the couch and your legs are up on the couch, and this is cesarean or vaginal delivery, if you take a nice deep inhale, expanding the ribcage, and as you exhale, you lift one leg and then you lift the other leg, and then you lower and you lower. And that movement is really going to target, our lower abdominals with that flexion and extension of the leg, but then the whole surrounding core in terms of, I talked about that transverse abdominis muscle, the transverse abdominis muscle is often worked when we're in a static hold. Okay. So you don't want to be necessarily doing a full plank, but modified plank, either on your knees, on your elbows, or putting your arms up onto your sofa and being in that plank position. That's really great for working the transverse abdominis. And then really simple exercises like leg slides are a great place to start, which can sound super simple, but if you are new to exercise or you've had a cesarean and it all feels a bit weird, that can be a huge challenge, so doing things like that. And then we would progress on from there.
So a lot of these exercises are good for at home.
Yes.
As opposed to like going to the gym.
Yes.
Would you recommend starting at home first, or?
I found it easier to work at home because I had 4 children, so I couldn't always get out and go to the gym. So if you have access to a gym, great. There's like a world of exercises you can do, and there's loads of equipment and cables and resistance band, dumbbells and whatever else you've got going on. So that's great. I found it easier to start at home, and like sometimes we can underestimate how powerful bodyweight exercises are, and like they can be so powerful and useful. And also from a human instinct perspective, the Homo sapiens did not have like gyms with dumbbells. They used other things. So actually, like, our body moves in a natural way that we should kind of honor and respect, and we can do that at home.
Yeah. So is that what inspired your book, Strong Like Mum?
Method. My Strong Like Mum method, yeah. So I talk in that book, the strapline of it says instinct, knowledge and exercise. And for me, that is key to a healthy lifestyle. So I used to have really high anxiety, really bad OCD. And my turning point came when I actually learnt about the human body and the human mind, how the mind and the body are interconnected, and how our instincts drive us. So when I'm talking about instinctive movement, or just that changed my life. So I'm really passionate about looking at everything we can learn from like original Homo sapiens, how they moved and carried their babies and birthed, and how we can apply that to modern day movement. And then secondly, knowledge that's power. Because I said at the very beginning, I could answer this question in so many different ways. Some women come to me with urinary incontinence, and it will be because they've got which means when they're leaking urine during exercise, right? If they're, if you cough and you're like, right.
A few of my friends' mums have that.
I had that in the beginning,
Okay, right. Yeah. So with that, some women have incontinence because they have a weakened pelvic floor. Maybe they've had an episiotomy, a tear or whatever during delivery. Okay. I feel you.
This is so painful.
So some women have urinary incontinence because they need to strengthen their pelvic floor. Other women have urinary incontinence because they've been doing their pelvic floor exercises, constantly, not getting a break. Maybe they're using a pelvic floor trainer. And then what happens is that you get this kind of constant partial tension of your pelvic floor. And if I used my fist as an example, if it's partially tense, it's completely useless because I can't pick anything up or use my fist. It's just there. And secondly, you can then also have urinary incontinence because you're in this partial tension, so you can't actually use it very well. So for some women, rather than strengthening, it needs to be relaxation. And so there's not one set answer. But my advice would just be get the knowledge. Because if you've got the knowledge, read my book. But if you've got the knowledge, once if you heard that, some women might hear this and think, maybe that's me. Because I've been doing my pelvic floor exercises for 12 months. And I don't understand why it's not getting better. Maybe that's what you need to look at, And that's the thing with pre and postnatal. There is no one answer.
Bodies they all work so differently.
You
touched briefly on the mental health, and because I find a lot of mums I talk to, especially working mums, don't have time to exercise, and they put it as not a priority, but then I'll see that they're really anxious or really stressed. How strong would you say that connection is between physically working out and your mental health?
In so many ways. And again, we don't have 5 hours because I could talk for 5 hours. But let me just give you one small example, okay? When I'm talking about breathing. So when we breathe, and your respiratory system, so your lungs and all of that, people underestimate how much of an impact that has on your core. It's right there. Like, we can't talk about our core health without looking at how we're breathing. But another thing that happens is, we've all heard of endorphins. Yes, they're known as the happy hormone. They make us feel good. And then there's another hormone in this happy hormone family called serotonin. And serotonin is a hormone, a chemical that's released in the brain, and it can impact our mood, our energy, our focus, productivity. But although it's released in the brain, it's produced in the gut. So every time you take a proper deep breath, if you keep your shoulders relaxed and you take a nice deep breath, as your diaphragm descends and you draw air in, it massages the top of your digestive tract, and it stimulates the production of serotonin, which is then released in the brain, and you have this immediate relaxation, energy, positivity, which is why we're always told, when you're stressed, take a deep breath. The first thing that someone will say to you is like, breathe, you know?
Yeah.
And that's why we're told to breathe. It can really impact our mood. And that's just, one small way about how our physical body can impact our mental well-being. And there's just so many other things about tension. When I'm stressed, I'll notice that I'm curling my toes, or I'm clenching my hands, or clenching my jaw. And that physical tension adds to mental stress. So if we can learn to physically, if you do some yoga or you stretch and you unwind, it can be huge.
I've also been noticing it's adding to my wrinkles. Like, I'll be frowning and I'm like, stop frowning, you're making wrinkles.
It's huge.
Such a good point. Yeah, because people don't make that connection enough, I think. Even though the information's out there and it tells you that, I think I'm new to the gym like this year, but I actually feel after a workout like I'm ready for the day, like I'm ready to go. Yeah.
And that's the thing, sometimes we see exercise as something that's going to be draining, but again, there are biochemical reactions happening within the body. When we are active, we are producing energy into our system. If you're leaving a workout and you're feeling depleted, and I don't mean like, I'm tired, that was hard, because we all feel tired after we've physically exerted ourselves. But if you are feeling depleted, then it's much more likely that you need to look at something like your sleep pattern, your nutrition intake, your hydration levels, your stress levels. It's very unlikely that the exercise is what is depleting your energy stores. And there's other aspects of life that we need to be looking at.
So I'm guessing there must be some nutritional advice and stuff that will kind of link with the stuff that you said that's going on in your gut, that will release these positive kind of hormones.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm not a nutritionist. I know the basics, and I know about my own nutrition, and that whole boring concept of a healthy, balanced diet, but it is so true. And I don't think one aspect of nutrition, maybe sugar, but can be criminalized, because we need carbohydrates. And actually, an interesting fact that people might not know is that if let's say you have a weight loss goal or a fat burning goal, if you want to burn body fat, you have to have carbohydrates in your system. If you don't eat enough carbohydrates and have that, the body uses different energy systems at different times. If you want to access the fat burning energy system, you need to have carbohydrates. If you don't, you won't access fat burning. You'll begin to cannibalize your own muscle mass. And so you might initially think, oh, I'm losing weight, this is great. But you're actually losing lean muscle. And we need lean muscle. The more lean muscle mass you have, the more energy you will burn at any given time, even when you're sat on the sofa watching TV. So the more lean muscle mass you have, you will burn the more energy at rest, at movement, whenever. So we need, which is why resistance training and weight training is so important.
Absolutely.
With nutrition, we need carbohydrates, we need healthy fats, we need, all that type of, you really do. And different colors of vegetables, they say to eat a rainbow of vegetables, because everything, dark purples might have more antioxidants, and, then you got your vitamin C. And there are also certain vitamins and minerals, and again, I'm not the expert on this, that you might need a certain vitamin or mineral to absorb another vitamin or mineral. So I do not now want to speak out of turn.
We need your book.
But exactly. It's all in there. I worked with a nutritionist on that, but it's all in there, what you need. So, I will send you guys my book anyway. So it's
Wonderful.
So before we wrap up, we've got mums from our previous seasons to send questions to this season. So you've got to pick a number between 1 and 5.
Okay.
And then you're going to get a question from a previous
I'll go for
mum.
4.
Okay, so this came from Candice. She was on season 1, episode 6, and we talked about birthing stories. That one was interesting, wasn't it?
Let's not revisit that.
She's got 2 sons, and she said, as a mother, would you say it impacted your friendship group? Did your friendship group mature with you as you went through your motherhood journey? Or did you have to find new friends because where you are in your life changed?
What question? What I can say to that is that my friends are my rock. I mean, I've got great family support as well, and my husband's fantastic, and you know, my family members are there, and I'm very blessed with this great support network. But my friends are so important to me, and I have certainly formed friendships through motherhood that I didn't have before. So I have got friends that I've had for a long time, since childhood, but like, motherhood doesn't have to be this solo venture. It is like, you know, they say it takes a village. It is seriously about that, because there are things that my friends can relate and understand to parenting now that even my mum, who had me 30 years ago, it's so different. It's so different. And there's nothing like living it in the now, you know, and I just really value my friends, because often, I don't know about everyone's situation, but women supporting other women is one of the most important things. And I feel like my friends, you know, they lift me up. When I'm down, they lift me up. And when I'm up, they lift me up. They lift me higher, and they'll celebrate, you know, and we will celebrate each other. And I just think it's so important, because motherhood can be this roller coaster. Sometimes it's really hard and tiring. And my friends, mean the world to me.
Oh, that's nice.
Oh, that's lovely.
Yeah. Oh, we're all friends here.
Well, before you go, we just have like a lovely little badass mom's gift that we just want to give you. Just to say thank you for coming.
I don't know why I screamed so loud down the mic.
No, we love the reaction.
Yes.
I just love presents.
Yeah.
Oh, you're
Something
Oh,
nice.
thank you.
Just as a thank you for coming along, because obviously we value your time.
Oh my God. Do I open this now? No.
It's up to you.
Do I Russell? What can it be?
Little treat.
I just think what a nice thought, and I mean I can't open it now because the bow is so tight I can't undo it. Strong like mum and all that, and I can't do a bow. Don't listen to me. I can't do anything right. But I just appreciate the thought behind that, and I thank you for having me on, because
Thank you, especially because you're from out of London. So
yeah, well, I'm not that. I used to live right here in Wood Green.
Oh, really?
I used to live here, and my university was in this building. It was the weirdest thing coming here, because it did used to be a university and a college, and I came here, so it was very weird walking up down this road and coming here today. Really strange, but I really appreciate you having me, because so often like these conversations don't happen, and women don't necessarily hear this information.
Right.
And if you can just quietly put it in your ear when you're doing your dishes, and it doesn't need to be this big loud broadcast thing, it can make all the difference. So hopefully it does.
It's very informative as well.
yeah, I feel like I've learned a lot.
I've got myself even. Yeah.
I feel like I need somebody like you in my life.
Well, I'm here.
Yes.
You're stuck with me now.
Amazing.
So thanks for having me.
Where can the listeners find you, and where can we get your book?
Oh yes, cool. Thank you for asking. So my website is called stronglikemum.com. The book is called The Strong Like Mum Method. My name is Shakira Akabusi. You can find me on Instagram at shakira.akabusi, or just search Strong Like Mum and it'll all be there.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening. Make sure to follow and subscribe at Badass Mums.
Daddy Baga!